The Dead Pair Podcast is energized by KL Ammo, Gamebore US.
Paul?
Welcome to the Dead Pair Podcast, coming in hot with everything you want to hear about sporting clays.
Guy Fieri.
How are you, gentlemen? Thanks for having me.
Anthony Matarese Jr., how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well.
Welcome back, David Radulovich.
That's a net positive. Brad Kidd.
Corey Cruz. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Now I feel awkward.
With your hosts, Jason
One
Rambo
more Red Bull for you.
and Sean Alley.
Woo, yeah!
Christmas.
Let's do it.
Often imitated but never duplicated. It's the Dead Pair Podcast. And now, it's showtime.
What's up, Mr. Large and in charge?
Who's the people that sing, Here I Go Again Down That Road?
White Snake?
Yeah, that's it. That's them.
So you're like the large version of White Snake now?
Well, I don't know. Just the song seemed to fit the occasion.
Oh, my gosh. All right, so moving on from that, we shot the first tournament ever at Airport Ridge.
Yes, we did.
And hats off to them, man. They for their first shoot ever, I think they did an outstanding job.
I did too, and I think the grounds were great as always, well manicured. Everything was clean and mowed down, and they actually did a really nice job with the food. Mm-hmm. They did a really nice job with the inside the lodge, getting everybody organized, getting everybody registered, and I think the shoot ran like clockwork, man.
I mean, really fair targets.
Very, very fair targets.
But I'll tell you something that impressed me is the trappers. Mm-hmm. I've never seen any of those guys before.
Nope.
And they were like knowledgeable.
Oh yeah,
like they were on it. They did a great job. Very friendly.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just a really enjoyable shoot.
Yeah, and I think for the number of shooters, they got what, around 150?
160.
160.
Yeah.
I think everybody should be back for the next one whenever they decide to do another one.
Well, you know, I talked to the club manager there at Airport Ridge and Doug, and I told him, I said, you know, because you guys did such a phenomenal job on your first shoot, you'll get people back.
Absolutely.
You know, we've been to first shoots that didn't go so great and left a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get somebody back once you've done something bad. Another thing, too, we're fresh off the heels of the regional at Cross Creek. And, man, I have heard so many things about that place. Seen a ton of pictures. What a beautiful facility. I am definitely going to put, I know our bucket list keeps growing.
We're going to need a bigger bucket.
But that's going to go towards the top of the bucket list because that place is absolutely gorgeous.
Yep.
And
it really wouldn't be that far for us to travel. We could drive down there pretty easily.
about 9.5 hours.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we can drive it. But it might be, actually, no, 9 hours. Excuse me. It's 9 hours.
That seemed a little long, but okay. Sure.
But anyway, it's going to be worth the drive because we're going.
Yeah.
So,
gotcha.
Tonight, we're talking to Mr. Matt Miller out of Georgia. And what makes him so relevant is I really like the backstory on him. He's like one of us, works a ton of hours.
Well, you shot with him one time, didn't you?
I did. I shot with him at the Trident Cup down at the Meadows.
Okay. All right.
And this guy can get it done now. Let me tell you what. But what's impressive is, you know, all the things in his, you know, day-to-day life like we deal with. But, man, he's got to go up against, like, Brandon Powell and Kevin DeMichael and, you know, Kyle Millwood.
All them Southern boys down there.
Well, everybody that's in Georgia,
yeah.
You know, and he gets it done. I mean, so I'm anxious to hear his thoughts, his process, his way up. I want to hear all of it, you know, and maybe he's got something good for the guys like yourself, Sean, you know, that maybe something in his journey that could have helped you a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just get out and practice, I might get better. I think the two go hand in hand.
I'm going to just refrain from comment.
Okay.
So that we don't have to delete anything.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh, man. Hey, real quick, a little selfish plug, if you don't mind, Sean.
Go for it.
I now have some 5-stand packages up on my website. I've put together everything from the bare bones necessity all the way up to, you know, what I consider like an ultimate package. Different traps, but again, anything is, we can customize it however you guys want. Just go to Trap Towers, plural, traptowers.com, and up at the top you'll see where it says 5-stand sale. I put together 4 different packages there with some pricing, and man, check it out. You know, if there's a way I can help you, it doesn't matter where you're at. I've sold traps as far down as Texas and as far north as Maine. I'd like to be there and be able to go through every bit of it with you, but I can still get the traps to you no matter what.
Yeah, and you've got all the accessories too. You got the controllers, the solar panels, all that stuff too they can get.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can, the package that I put together, some of them come with solar panels and carts and wireless release systems. But if you want to change the wireless release and you want to go with a different model or something different, I can adjust it. However, if there's a way I can help, get a hold of me.
Gotcha. No, I'm sure people will be reaching out because obviously customization is key. Some people want this, some people want that. So it's nice that you're flexible.
Speaking of which, I know this guy that builds signs.
Who?
He's really, really, really hard to get a hold of.
Don't know who you'd be talking about.
But maybe look at some custom 5-stand menus and stuff like that. So.
Oh, yeah, we can do that kind of stuff, sure. No
like
problem.
all-weather, metal, really nice, like what you did for Guy Fieri. Those were nice.
Oh, yeah, those will hold up for years.
Yes. So, but yeah, tons of options there, folks. If I can help any way, shape, or form, let me know.
Cool.
But, hey, let's get to Matt Miller. I think he's waiting on us to call, and let's get going on this.
Good.
All right, on the phone with us, Matt Miller. Matt, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Jason. How are you guys?
We're doing great, Matt. Glad to have you on the show, buddy.
Well, I appreciate you all having me.
Well, Matt, I shot with you down at the Trident Cup at the Meadows, and I thought, man, this guy's just lighting it up. And then it was Anthony that reminded us on a podcast that, hey, you guys ought to get Matt on. I'm like, oh, yeah. So I hate to say I forgot about you, but I guess I kind of did.
Oh, no, that's all right. Actually, that was fun shooting with you down the Trident Cup. We shot sporting together. I didn't think sporting was my best performance of that event. Shelby and I were kind of battling the onesies, but we had the squad. And then that FETASC event was one of my bigger wins. I won the FETASC main event at Trident Cup with what I thought was a pretty solid score. So I was grateful to have that because winning anything in the area with the level of shooters that I have the fortune or misfortune of shooting against is I'm grateful to have it. It's difficult to do.
Yeah. Well, Matt, tell everyone where you're from and how you got started in this crazy game.
Well, I'm originally from Athens, Georgia, and I guess I started shooting a shotgun, almost like everybody else, bird hunting primarily. Dad and I love to shoot dove, and in fact, opening day of dove season is like our holiday. If my funeral is held on opening day of dove season, I won't be there. So, that was kind of how we got started. Left the game, and I ended up moving to, never did it competitively, or kind of left shooting a shotgun aside besides going to a dove field. Did shoot sporting a couple of times, but never really grabbed onto the game. Moved down to Florida, and what I actually did competitively, from a personality standpoint, I have to have a competitive endeavor. It's just how I'm wired. I need to be striving towards something.
Right.
I played competitive paintball. So I did that for a while and was a part of a team that would travel all over the country, and we kind of got to the semi-professional level, and we were well sponsored and kind of funded. The guy that ran the team ran into some personal problems. They were kind of serious, and the team kind of fell apart without his leadership. I tried to go pro, wasn't quite good enough. And then I decided, this team sport stuff is difficult. If you don't have a good team, it's hard to perform at the level you want to perform at. So I was like, I really enjoyed shooting a shotgun. Let me get back into that. And so, I thought it was a great opportunity to do something with my dad because he also enjoyed shooting. So that was a real attraction of the game, something that we could do together. My dad's like my best friend. And so I started Sporting Clays, kind of the local club, the local gun club. And then I found Bradford Sportsman's Farm that Pat Welch and the Bradford boys are on, and that kind of became my home away from home in Florida. And they're still kind of like a second family to this day. But moved through the classes and got to master class and really struggled once I got there and was kind of bouncing back and forth to AA, or at least once. And that's when I decided to get into getting sound instruction from Anthony. And that's where the instruction journey started. And then, ultimately continuing on, my kind of abbreviated history. I moved to Georgia a couple of years ago, moved back home, and have been kind of a part of that community now. And I love shooting here. And I would say now the Meadows is my home club, and, get to shoot and make friends with a lot of my competitors around the middle Georgia area. I'm a little bit north of there in Athens, but that's kind of where my primary competitive stomping grounds are, from, Old Hudson, Meadows, Cherokee Rose,
Right.
Big Red Oak, all those clubs.
Well, I mean, obviously being down where you're at, I mean, in Georgia, there's a lot of great shooters. You've got, Kevin DeMichael, the Parkers, Kyle Millwood, Brandon Powell. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, you really got to bring your game. If you're in master class and you're trying to get along with those guys, you really got to bring a game every time you set foot on the tournament field, right?
Yeah, and that was kind of a huge talking point when I moved up here with a lot of my Florida friends. And one of my best friends now, his name's Jonathan Henrici. He's a really good shooter, and he's a good friend. And he's kind of, I would consider him my, kind of a friend that helps kind of mentor you. He's been an All-American. He's a great shooter. And he was just talking about we always talk about the competition here. And what I say is there are great shooters in Florida. The difference in Middle Georgia is the density of the shooters. So if you come up here and you shoot in Middle Georgia, when I would shoot like a 91 or something, I'm like, hey, that's not bad. And where I was from in North Georgia, you could get away with maybe a, runner up or something like that, or M1. If, Malcolm Parker would come down to Bradford and kick all of our butts a lot. And anyway, so maybe if he wasn't there, you could get away with HOA. And in Georgia, you'll be like ninth. And I mean, I'm dead serious. Right. Unless you shoot 96, 97, somebody is going to shoot a big score. And, 5 to 10 competitors deep at a well-attended monthly shoot can win that shoot. I mean, so it's just very deep, and you have to shoot really big scores. So that definitely elevated my game, because I thought I could shoot. And then I moved here, and I had to reevaluate that statement. I was like, I may not be able to shoot quite as well as I thought. So
that's
that kind of had, cued in a big desire to improve that still goes on, because if I show up to any shoot here and I'm not prepared to shoot my best, I will be mired down the list quickly.
Well, and that's very admirable of you to actually look in the mirror and admit that to yourself, because it's hard for a lot of us. It's like we all have our egos and we all have what we think we're all about. But, Jason and I have had it happen to us many times. We go to a big shoot, go to the Nationals, go to the Jack Links, go to the U.S. Open, and buddy, I'm telling you what, there's plenty of people out there that'll kick your butt around the ring. So,
that's even on I kind of regard arrogance as a fatal disease, and it can get a hold of you pretty quick here. So humility is always a round away. It's always a competition away. It's a station away. It might be a pair away. So it'll get on you quick.
Well, Matt, let's back up here a second. What do you do for a living? And this is relatable here, so I want everybody to hear this. What do you do for a living?
I'm a construction consultant, so I'm not self-employed, which obviously complicates things when you have to request vacation time, et cetera, to travel to shoot. But I work for a company that essentially provides construction consulting advice to financial investors in projects. So they may be co-investing or co-owning a project or build it, and we're their eyes and ears. It's similar to owner's representation work, but a little bit different. So that's what I do for a living. I'm a consultant, kind of a pencil pusher / job site observer.
Okay. So now you have a family, right? I think you said you have 2 kids. Is that correct?
I have a wife, a 5-year-old daughter that just started kindergarten, and a 2.5-year-old son that's pure chaos. And so my 2-year-old he's a mess. And then, yes, a loving wife too.
So now, on top of career and a family, you're right in the middle of building a house.
I am. I'm hopefully now on the downhill stretch. We should be moving in here within a month or so. We're on the back side of it, but correct. I also try to pull a full Anthony and build my own house, which I did. So yeah, we've been going through the process for a couple of years, but over the last 9 months of essentially all of this competitive season, I've been in the middle of building my own house as a hobby. So I've had a full-time job, full-time dad, and then on the weekends I would basically work on the house all day or try to stay ahead of my subs, because I did a decent amount of the work myself as well. So anything I could do, site work, compacting porches, miscellaneous punch out stuff, installing door handles, mirrors, job site cleanup, all the grunt stuff that, you would typically pay someone to do. I would just kind of, man up and do it myself, save a few bucks.
Well, this is where your story is a little bit more unique, and this is why I really wanted to get you on the podcast, because like most people that compete in this game, and I say most, you have a job that you're committed to every week. You have a family. You're right in the middle of building a house. But in a phone conversation that you and I had, you were telling me that you figured out a balance with training and how to do this. Can you share that with our listeners?
Well, I don't know that I ever really figured it out, but I think I'm beginning to be at peace with the approach, if that makes sense. And if hopefully people have listened to Anthony's podcast before they listen to this one for that background. But, Anthony speaks to embracing that journey, right? If you have an analogy, the destination is being the best shooter you can be. Your gas money is the amount of financial investment you can have in the game. Your time in the driver's seat is your time investment. And those are the real components to that journey. Right. I think I'll add an additional layer to that analogy, but speaking just primarily to the resource investments, I think what you're really hitting at is the time investment, right? Where do we have the time and how do you do the approach? Well, the first thing is, if you're at peace with the journey, my goal is to be the best shooter I can be. That's all I think about all the time. That's my goal. I don't worry about any other of the ancillary portions of the game. I don't think about sponsorship. I don't think about being an All-American. That's a great honor, but pursuing those points isn't feasible for me right now. So it's not something I think about. So I am very simplistic in my approach. How can I get better? And when you boil it down that simple, it makes a lot of your other decisions more linear. Okay, if I want to get better, I need to practice. Well, practice becomes complicated because you have time investment. So one thing I think that you have to do is number one, kind of figure out the time. And if you can't, be okay with that, so you don't frustrate yourself when you can't. You don't get discouraged. And when you do, right, you need to make the most of it. So I generally practice a few ways, basically, really three ways, but primarily two. So the first one be how many people would practice, where they go to a club and they shoot a round. Well, I do that with my dad. We go have a good time. But while I'm there, I am totally invested in evaluating my shooting during that round. So I use that as a tool to kind of get a snapshot of a variety of targets. How am I performing? What am I doing from a technique standpoint, good or bad? And then I can bring that into what I call my skills practices. So I am fortunate enough to have a little bit of land here. This may be unique to some people, but there's ways around it. And I bought a used trap, and my dad had a small, like, Chromatic Super Hawk. So I will set pairs and develop skills on certain presentations or certain skills I want to develop, whether that be, finishing a shot visually with my eyes, a long rolling bird that you spend a lot of time with, or whether that's, a trap shot where I need to effectively see under the gun, or, a deep quartering bird where I need to drive with my lower body so that my hands don't control that shot. And I will practice those. Those skills practices are very short. And this is something that's been evolved really recently. And I kind of stole this from Jonathan, where, I may only shoot 75 or 100 birds, but I'm really focusing on either a limited sets of presentations or limited skills, so that I can specifically develop those skill sets. And why that's important with the schedule is, a lot of times I do those at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Like, if you may have seen my Facebook page, a lot of my practices may be, 7:30 after I've worked all day. And, and it may only be once a week, and I may take 2 weeks off to work on the house. And then right before an event, I may do kind of go to a course, get that evaluation of my shooting, and then 2 skills practices, and then go to the event and fire away. So whatever you can do, then you have to have a plan to make the most of it. And I think that tends to be the driving influence of frustration. It's either they get frustrated because they can't shoot, or they don't really have a plan for how to improve. And that's the next portion of the analogy I would add. If the time investment is, your driver's time, the instruction is your Google Maps, right? It gives you the direction to go when you practice. So circling all back on your question, I do it with pre-planned practices. It may be when I can do it late at night, and I just have to suck it up. And then when I do it, I have used what I've learned from instruction is a map to what I want to improve.
Well, Matt, let me go back another step here, because one of the things you touched on, which I think is a very important thing, is the financial side of this whole thing. So everybody has a different set of goals, and everybody has a different pocketbook, for lack of the word.
Budget.
Yeah, that's probably the better word for it. The sport's not cheap. We know that, right? And we've talked to all kinds of people that are listeners to our show. And one of the biggest frustrations, I think, is the fact that, ammo's gone up, the targets have gone up, the cost of travel's gone up. So, when you're actually sitting down, and I'm sure you probably kind of maybe do a semi-plan for the year about what kind of shoots you want to attend, how do you decide on what your budget is for the year? And I'm not trying to pull out any specific numbers necessarily, but I guess what I'm asking is here's the guy making, 40 grand a year, and he's, a general labor guy. And then here's another guy, he's a superintendent, so he's making a lot more money than that. So he's got a lot more money to throw at the problem, so he can go to a lot more places and afford that. How do you break it down, or how do you justify where you put your money year in and year out to not only practice, but compete, and then also probably have some left over for coaching or gear or whatever else?
That is a fantastic question. And I get borderline irritated sometimes when I listen to certain podcasts and people are almost numb to their audience, where, the average attendee at a gun club or sporting clays probably has a limited flexible income. I'm a middle-class guy. I don't have an unlimited budget. And sometimes we frame our discussions around competition and practice without consideration for budgets in real world scenarios. You need to go empty a carousel 3 times a week. Well, if I did that, all right, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. So first of all, it's a non-issue for me, right? I'm not, people say, well, you got to make sacrifices. Well, my kids aren't going hungry because I want to shoot better. All right. That's just not going to happen.
There you go.
So that's a great question. And I'm proud of you guys for let's just being honest about where most people in the game probably have to make financial decisions, because, I'll give you an example. One of the, something that's not talked about, if you want to pursue being an All-American, okay, there is not only is there you have to be a great shooter, a great competitor, but there's a volume component that goes into that, where you have to be willing to shoot, unless you're like the elite of the elite, like Anthony, who can, shoot select events and qualify. But for most people pursuing that, it's probably a $30,000 investment in just competition costs.
Right.
So the way I do that is, number one, that's why, there's a lot that goes into that. So number one is when I practice, I try to never waste a practice. That's value to me. So I try to practice with intent and execute that intent every time I pick up a shotgun. If I think I'm just going to go out, you almost never see me just shooting. I simply don't have the resources to just go shoot to shoot. So that's number one, is I try not to waste opportunities, because to me that's wasted resources. I'd rather be with my kids at a park than just, wasting shells.
Right.
So the next thing is I select events based on what's reasonable. That's why you primarily see me in the Southeast. If I compete, I generally choose, I think last year I did 6 or 7, what I would consider 2-day main events. And this year I'm probably going to do 8. And I select those that are there. If there's a big event at the Meadows, I'm going to prioritize that over a big event that I have to fly to, because I know I'm going to get excellent competition. It's going to be an excellent event. And I can grow as a competitor just as much as I could traveling to some respect. Now, I do, obviously, to improve as a shooter, you have to go to different places and experience different things. And I plan on doing that. It's just with my long-term goal, I'm willing to be patient with those things. So it's being smart about your selections with events. If you have limited resources, limited vacation, then kind of map out your year. And that's what I do is try to make things very logical. If you have friends that you can travel with, sharing hotel costs and rental car costs and cart costs and all those things makes a dramatic difference. When I go get my lessons, Jonathan and I go together. So there's some shared costs there where we learn. I always recommend if you have someone of similar skill level and you want to go to an instructor, many of them can offer some discounts for a 2-person lesson or whatever it is. And, that can help minimize some of those costs. But I think this is something that I recommend. I'm just a huge proponent of quality instruction. And when I decided to get instruction was actually when I thought I was going to be the most resource limited. So when my wife was pregnant with my daughter, I was like, look, I'm probably going to have a lot less time to shoot. I'm obviously going to have to be contributing significant resources to my daughter. I don't have the time to just hack away and figure it out on my own. So when you get quality instruction, you are making an investment in your shooting that I feel like has a financially beneficial return on investment. In other words, you will spend, I don't even know how many shells. You may never figure it out, trying to figure out certain techniques or concepts of shooting that you can learn about instruction with a quality instruction in one lesson. Yeah. So yes, lessons can be expensive, but if you look at things in terms of my plan was be part of the game long term. And if that's the case, I feel like every time I get a lesson, I'm getting a significant return on my investment. In other words, it's going to save me frustration costs, boxes of shells, trying to break certain targets and all those things. And I feel like, I almost get a little frustrated when I talk to people about lessons, like, well, it's expensive and it's at time. I'm like, yeah. And number one, they probably have, they may have 3 sets of expensive shooting glasses and a brand new gun, but lessons are expensive. But yeah. With that sort of level of irony aside, you will shoot significantly less shells trying to figure stuff out than with instruction than without. So that, to me, there is a huge financial and time benefit to having the right mentality, which I was educated on about 10 minutes into meeting Anthony, and I started begrudging costs and time. And he basically said, hey, do you want to be better in 15 years? Yeah. Are you going to be better next year than you are this year? Yeah. Then shut up about all that other stuff and let's get to work getting better now. And that was the mentality, like, just work on getting better and shoot when you can with the resources you have. And at that time, I was shooting an auto. If you can't afford an expensive over and under, the reigning national champion shoots a $1,600 gun. Yep. All right. Yep. Nobody on the phone or very likely nobody listening, with the exception of select few people, can sniff Joe on a sporting clays course and he shoots a $1,600 gun. So I only, recently invested in an over and under, and I bought a used over and under, and I have a Greenwood, weighted year. People are like, oh, I need to have this gun. I need to go get a fitted stock. Invest in your shooting. This is probably something I should have brought up earlier. Invest in your shooting first, and then the other things like stocks and high-end guns, I think, come later when your technique and your foundation are solid enough to justify those things. And Anthony explicitly told me that. I mentioned, hey, I was thinking about getting a custom stock, maybe my 3rd lesson or something. And he flat out, people say, well, you're spending all this money with him. He's taught me out of spending more money than I've ever spent with him. And he's like, you need to buy shells and focus on your improvement before you go and invest in these other things that aren't going to give you the return on your investment.
Absolutely. That's well said. And that's something too, Sean and I have joked one time on the podcast about having rain guns because we got our hands on the new A400s, and there's nothing wrong with that gun. If I had to start all over again, trust me, I love my Kohler. Absolutely love that gun. It's a phenomenal gun. But the money I spent would have been better well spent on buying an A400 and buying pallets of ammo versus buying that Kohler.
And taking lessons with somebody like Anthony.
Right. But I mean, at the same time, I bought the gun. it'll last forever. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, it's not eating anything.
Right. But I do want to circle back a little bit, Matt. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you because we keep getting away from something I want to touch on. Your instruction with Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, how did that come about? How did you choose, or why did you choose Anthony?
That's another really good question. And I'm the kind of guy, I generally don't do anything arbitrarily, capriciously I have a plan, and I try to give it thought. So I was shooting a camo A400 that he alludes to, and I knew I was, fairly resource limited. And so I wanted to choose an instructor that would, not, I guess, for lack of a better word, not look down his nose, but not focus on some of the equipment things and just focus on improving me as a shooter. So first of all, his reputation spoke for itself. He had a phenomenal reputation, but Anthony shot a 391 for years. So I was like, I didn't want to show up to a lesson. And let's be honest. And we talked to that on the earlier phone conversation. We don't have to go to a rabbit hole, but there are, some individuals in the game where, they look at maybe their students more as a revenue source than as a student, say, and I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
And I knew, number one, he's so busy that, my contribution, he doesn't need me to stay. He's going to have more business behind me. That's actually a huge advantage because he's not, he doesn't need to get you on a program or continue with the lessons. If you enjoy the lesson, he knows you're going to come back. And if not, he's got, 10 other people behind you that he's trying to help too. So that was a lot of the decision is he shot an auto for years. So I was like, I don't want to show up there. And next thing you know, I'm trying to get sold a gun that, I don't have the means to buy at this point in my life. I have that means now. My life has changed, and that's what Anthony alludes to. But a lot of it was because I wanted someone that I had confidence would focus on improving me as a shooter and not necessarily viewing me as a source of revenue. And I thought I got that and more. And so that just like I said, it was immediately, how can you improve? We've had an ongoing sort of mentorship where I can reach out to him with questions, and it was really just part of the research and my unwillingness to make a bad decision. So that's kind of the long and short of it.
Gotcha. Well, it's interesting because, the reason Jason and I started this podcast was because when we got into registered targets, we spent money all the wrong ways. I mean,
oh, yeah.
You criticize the shells you're using. You look hard at the gun that you're using. Am I using the right glasses? It goes on and on and on. And I think what you've said and what you've explained is so valid to so many of our listeners because it's easy to point the finger at everything else but yourself. Right. Number one, and you're one of those guys who's looked in the mirror and realized, hey, if I'm going to get better, this is what I need to do. And I think that touching on the fact that, hey, coaching is expensive. Good coaching is expensive. And you have to make a decision. Do I spend the money on that new gun, or do I spend the money going to a coach and learning how to shoot the gun that I have? And I think that everything that you've said is very grassroots and very relatable to most of the people that listen to our podcast because that's who they are. They're people that work a full-time job. This is what they do on the weekend. This is their fun. This is their golf. This is their bass fishing. This is whatever. This is their hobby. And, we all want to get better. We all want to do shoot better than we currently do. So it's like, how do we get there? And I think that what you're saying is brutally honest. I think what you're saying is totally believable and relatable. And honestly, I think, you're helping a lot of people here. Jason and I said it time and time again, but I think you're driving it home as being, a working man with a family, building a house, and then you're still being able to go out there and shoot and threaten some of the top guys.
And I'll take it a step farther in what you're saying, Sean.
Go for it.
I think what Matt just said is the pinnacle of the reason why we started this podcast.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
And people look at us and say, okay, well, if you know better now, then why aren't you better shooter? Well, it's real simple. I'm in the studio right now and sit out there practicing.
Yep.
So, I take it all in stride, and I'm happy with where I'm at. I'm in AA. If I get my head out of my rear, I can be competitive. And that's something I wanted to ask you too, Matt, is goal setting. So my goal setting, I'm where I'm at. I don't want to go to Masters. I have a slew of reasons about that, and we've talked about it plenty on this podcast. Well, how do you go about not only setting but obtaining your goals based on not only your budget but the amount of time you have?
I think number one is if you keep your goal. I don't need short-term goals. I'm a highly motivated person. In fact, I think when Anthony was mentioning me, I probably have a tendency to put too much pressure on myself. So I'm just kind of one of these guys. If I set my jaw to something, it generally gets done to some degree. So I don't have a problem with the motivation. It's more the pressure aspect. So I think you have to set something that is long-term and feasible, and also has to make sense from, for me, it has to make sense from a time and a financial standpoint. But it also, I think, you have to think about how that goal influences the way you think about the game and your enjoyment of the game. And what I mean by that, if you say, all right, I want to win AA at the Gator Cup next year. If you don't do that, you're going to be really upset and you're disappointed in your shooting. And what if you got third? That's a heck of an achievement.
That's very commendable.
Yeah. So I tend to keep my goals pretty general, and it's really, I can tell everybody what my goal is to be the best shooter I can be. And that gives me a lot of mental comfort, because it keeps my path really clear. It's continuing to develop and improve. If one day I get an opportunity to pursue All-American, that's great, and I can set an interim goal, but that same long-term goal is going to stay the same. And when you do that, it just helps you be at peace with your results. It helps you, continue to kind of get driven. I think it helps you with your competitive relationships, because you're not worried about beating I hope that guy doesn't shoot well so I can finish first. A lot of the guys I compete against are some good friends, and I hope they shoot great, because how they shoot has nothing to do with how I improve. Right. Absolutely nothing.
That's well said.
And if they go out and do a whole bunch of things, more power to them, because I can still improve. So, you try to set, very, very reasonable. I think it has to be very reasonable, and they need to be without arrogance or ego. So if I feel like I'm a decent shooter, but I just got back from the Southeast Regional, fantastic event. It's not really feasible for me to anticipate winning the Southeast Regional. I think many shooters, especially when they get to master class, they don't take into account really your shooting journey has only begun, even in AA. The guys that are shooting the best have years and years of experience. I also get instruction from Zach. I supplement. Now I'm at a position, like Anthony says, press on the gas when you can. Now I have an opportunity to press on the gas a little harder, and I also get instruction from Zach, and it's been a phenomenal addition to my learning team, so to speak, or my instructional team. And he has shot 200,000 registered targets. Well, that experience he weaponizes against his competitors. Okay. I mean, let's just be honest, that he's paid his dues, he learns. And so I think as a part of setting goals, you have to be willing to accept the learning curve, the bumps and bruises, the failure that comes along with trying to achieve it. And that's where I think a lot of people struggle, particularly in masterclass, is they don't understand, or they don't take into account. And I didn't early in my career. I think, a lot of, Jonathan, one of my buddies, would kind of look at me like I had three eyes sometimes, be like, I think I could go in and shoot really well. And he'd be like, hey, bud, you got some dues to pay and they're going to hurt. And boy, was he right. And I continue to pay them. So, you just have to be comfortable, number one, setting a goal that helps you. I'm not getting specific about goals. I know that, but I think you have to have something that's reasonable, that matches your ability, your budget, and your time. And I think you have to have the fortitude to struggle and still keep going towards that goal.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, I like it. Speaking of which, I'm sure your story is going to intrigue quite a few people, because everything outside of the sport in your day-to-day life is so relatable. We touched on that. And if you had to sum all of this up with maybe a couple sentences of advice for someone that wants to get to where you are, Matt? Let's say they're listening to this and like, man, this guy sounds just like me on his day-to-day life. They want to be where you are in shooting. If you had to sum it up for advice, what would you give them?
It really boils down to, I think, three things. I think it's team, plan, implementation. So, you need to have a team of people around you to help you develop, whether that be good instruction, good friends or people in the industry. I feel like I'm fortunate to have a lot of people available, Kyle Millwoods, the Dominics, the, Zachs, the Anthonys, all these people to help contribute to my learning. Then you need to have a plan, those goals. I think a lot of people tend to, they'll get instruction and they'll kind of get a plan and then they get new instruction and go a different route and don't stick with a linear path towards their goal. How do I get there? I need to work on these things. These are the things that are important right now. I need to improve them. And then ultimately that goes into the implementation. You have to be willing to implement those things. So, I have limited time, but I'm willing to go practice at 8:00 when I'm bone tired, skip dinner and go shoot to implement my goal of practice and improving. And I think it really boils down to being that simple: team, plan, implementation.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Was there anything along your journey that you wish you would have done differently?
I really wish I'd have taken into account the experience stuff earlier. And I would have spent a lot less time frustrated. Sometimes I don't want to sound like I have it together necessarily now. I mean, I've shot bad. I shot terrible at the prelim of the Georgia State and thought about loading all my stuff into my cart, buckling my seatbelt, and driving into the pond. So
we've been
still
there, right,
happens.
Jason?
I try to work through it. But I think that's probably one thing. Is do. One advantage when you have kids, like I feel like that's been one of the biggest things to help with my shooting is kids give you perspective. And, when I won the Trident Cup feed task, when I got home, I think the next night my son smashed my trophy on the ground, just playing with it. And it's like, so win or lose, right? He doesn't care. He's just a kid. He's my son. So it gives you perspective where you don't ride the highs and the lows. And I think I had a lot more tendency early in my journey to ride the highs and the lows. And now I'm, you have the luxury of being a little more perspective. I mean, you could be a national champion, and if you go down to the local convenience store and you want a Coke, if you don't have that $1.50 for the Coke, you ain't getting it. All right. So,
yep.
There's some perspective with that. And I think that would be the thing I would change, is really be more comfortable with paying my dues early in terms of products or things. I've bought some things that didn't work out or all that, but all that I think is good. It's just, I wish if I would have been more willing to accept those dues, I think I would have been better off at, kind of weaponizing that experience and not writing it off as just pure frustration and moping around for 2 days.
Gotcha.
Well, Matt, do you have any sponsors that you've picked up along the way you'd like to thank?
I don't. I'm kind of,
okay.
I don't have any sponsors, to be honest. It's like I said, it's not something I think about. We're kind of in that age where social media is important and people want to advertise those relationships. I'm more focused on work, family, and all that. If I end up getting a relationship with a partner, that's great. But my goal is to improve, and I think I can do that. With what I've got now. So, and if something comes down the road, great. But my focus is just on shooting better.
Well, speaking of what you got now, I know you listen to the show. We're going to do some rapid fire with you if you want to.
All right, fire away.
All right. So tell us what kind of gun you got.
Got a DT11, and I'm madly in love with my gun. I have a DT11 with that I've actually bought used. A friend of mine, Art Lavely, gave me a line on a Safe Queen that I bought to save a few dollars, and it's got a greenwood stock, and Jim actually had a well-charred pattern stock that survived his fire that he worked on, and it actually turned out to be a gorgeous, not gorgeous, it's not exhibition grade. It's a very nice stock, and I actually finished it myself. Zach likes my gun because I finished it myself, and it looks like a match. He found a stock that matches my factory forend, and sat in my office with some beers and rubbed some oil into it, and it's a nice stock, and love the gun.
Very cool. So is that 32-inch barrel?
32s. Yeah, I shoot pure gold champions, double 20s. I don't change a whole lot. And
so you stick with 20.
Yeah, double 20s is what I stick with. I freaking love my DT11, to be honest with you.
Is that ported, Matt?
No, it's not. Mainly from the noise. I take it shooting birds, and I don't want to get into a fist fight with a guy in the hay bale next to me over my unported gun or ported gun.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how different porting. Some of it's loud, some of it isn't. But like a factory, and no insult to Browning or anything, but like a factory ported Browning is the loudest freaking gun I've ever been around in my life.
Oh yeah.
But then you take like Sean's got a DT11 and I've got a Kohler, and they're both Rhino ported. And I'm telling you right now, they are nowhere near as loud as a Browning ported gun.
Yeah, I've seen the difference in some of my buddies porting it. It does, I think, lessen felt recoil, at least from what I can notice, but I still haven't gotten it done. I have real reservations about punching holes in my lady.
I get it. It took us a lot to do it too, so I totally understand.
I let Jason go first.
Yeah, he was real nice about that.
Exactly.
So what kind of shells do you shoot, Matt?
Mainly game bore, white gold, 1 ounce, 1300.
There you go.
I'm a big recoil mitigation guy. So, I think people tend to be a little oblivious to the long-term effects of recoil. And they're like, I'm not a big guy. And I'm like, yeah, I weigh 150 pounds and I shoot 1.8 ounce, 1300. It's like, good luck with that. Let me know how your shoulder surgery goes in 15 years. Right. I shoot, if you see me with a shotgun or an over and under, I have 1 ounce in there. I'm not a big fan of recoil. You'd be surprised how many shooters at the top have had to change from 1.8 to 1 ounce because of long-term effects of recoil. And they don't mention it, and I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, but there's a few of them.
Oh yeah. No, we've heard it several times. So are you 7.5 or 8s guy?
Both. I'd have 8s in my right pocket, 7.5s in my left. I use 8s about 80% of the time. 7.5s for anything long, anything like a flying rabbit or rabu that has a denser, a heavier type clay, and then or something like a flop target I want to have more energy on. It doesn't confuse me. I'm so used to it, but I would say 80% 8s, 20% 7.5s.
You're singing me right here to the choir. So that's I'm the exact same way. Sean's a 7.5 guy. I actually use both, but Matt, I already know, but just tell everybody, vest or shell bag? Vest.
Definitely a vest guy.
What brand?
I shoot a camo Castellani vest. I'm probably one of the few people that have that. It's a discontinued vest that camo is near and dear to my heart. So if you see me to shoot, I'm probably the only guy there with that, OD camo Castellani vest. So that's what I shoot. And that's my competition vest. When I zip that thing up, it's game time. There you go.
What about your glasses?
Pilas. Not a big lens changer. Try to stay in the middle. I shot a 44 ED forever and just switched to the 36, alphabet soup, whatever it is. And it's great. And 18 CED for sunny days. And then I might go to that 92 for overcast. I shot a little bit of that this weekend when we had a little bit of rain Sunday morning. So Pila glasses.
And ear protection.
I am weird about my ears. My dad is about half deaf as a post, and after screaming at him for a time, I wear double ear protection. So I wear foam ear plugs, and then I wear ear muffs, electronic ear muffs over the top. So I'm also, probably not in the majority on that. So if you see a guy in a camo vest wearing, look like a British guy with earmuffs on, then that's probably me.
All right. Now here's this. What's in your bag? And what I mean by that is, what's something weird that you carry with you that maybe may come as a surprise to somebody? Do I have lucky rabbit's foot? Like myself, I carry rosin bag with me when my palms get sweaty. Anything like that? Any little odd things you carry with you?
So probably it's not weird, but something I do mentally is I'll look at my pictures of my kids a lot while I'm shooting, because if you're trying to be confident, I feel like I get more of my self-image, that from being a good dad than I do shooting. So I try to, if I'm stressed out or, got a score going that I want to maintain, a lot of times I'll zone out and look at funny pictures of my kids or videos, and that kind of levels me out. It's like, all right, back to all that. What's going on over here is not the end of the world, so I can relax and breathe a little bit. So I'll probably say looking at my kids' pictures is what I do during a round. That might be the weirder thing.
That's, what? That's very cool, though.
Yeah, that's definitely a unique answer for sure.
Absolutely. I like it. Well, Matt, you've given a ton of great information, and I think a lot of people listening to this are going to be very relatable to everything you've said as far as your struggles from day-to-day life and, how it relates to shooting. And I think you've helped a lot of people. I really do.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully somebody can get something from this and continue to hammer away. And, I think the game is kind of missing. If you look, it's either, youth that may have the support of their parents, or it's people that are retired and have plenty of income. But a lot of that middle ground, that professional that's in their early 30s to mid 30s, early 40s, is probably not as popular in the game as we would all like it to be. And I think it could be, because of the frustration of trying to managing all that. So if something I've said can alleviate some of that frustration and get those people out to the shoot and bring their kids. Anthony brings his kids. Dominic brings his kids. I occasionally bring my kids when they want to go, and fortify the sport with the young professionals and the family men and women that I think belong there.
That's, man, very well said.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing's been refreshing, Matt, and it's really nice because we have so many top level shooters on here that are giving their advice, giving their experience, giving their history, and trying to help our listeners. And I think that above all this year, at this point so far, I think you've laid down a lot of really sincere, heartfelt, grassroots knowledge for most people to be able to latch onto. And I think it's just going to be a great help. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing that with us.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
And we're going to hook up, Matt. I got plans for next year down at the Meadows, so let's shoot together again, man. That was fun.
Let me know. I'll plan on being there. That's for sure.
Awesome. All right, Matt. Well, you have a good evening, sir.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you, Matt.
I think we can all relate to Matt.
I think it's very refreshing to talk to somebody that not only performs to the level he does, but also has the day-to-day challenges that we all do.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I thought he was so important to get on the podcast.
Absolutely.
So, hey, speaking of important, you guys got to check out these segments. I mean, I know some people don't like them, but I'm telling you, I think you're going to like this one. All right, on the phone with us is Mark Hildebrand. Mark, how you doing this evening, sir?
I am doing great. Thanks, guys.
Well, Mark, we're having you on here for a Barepelt segment. First of all, let's start with who you are and where you're from, and if you're a shooter, what class you're in.
So my name is Mark Hildebrand. I'm originally from Louisiana, but I live a little bit west of Houston now, so I'm kind of ingrained in the Houston shooting community. Mm-hmm. I'm a master class shooter.
Okay.
And haven't been for an awful long time. I really brought into shooting about 10 years ago, and but I'm definitely addicted.
Do you have a club that you call your home club, Mark?
Definitely, that would be West Side Gun Club out of Katy.
Okay, gotcha.
So do you are you I mean, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but are you still competing at all? Are you still traveling around, or are you just kind of doing it as you can?
No, I compete quite often, and fortunately, I have a coworker from Wyoming, and so he's introduced me to a lot of friends in Utah, Wyoming, Colorado. So we try to pick a location north and at least get together once a year, and so I that's one of the aspects I like the most, is being able to travel to shoot. So do it quite often.
Gotcha.
That's awesome. Well, tell me how Barepelt came to be. How did you find Barepelt? What made you decide to buy one?
And it was traveling. It was the year 2021. I think it was July, and I was competing at Providence Hill Farm in Mississippi. And it was amazingly hot. It was so hot you could rub 2 ice cubes together and start a fire.
That's hot.
It was hot. And, down here, some people are hardcore, but I really love shooting in a vest, but usually the vest goes in the closet around June. And you don't bring it back out till early October. And so one of my close friends, Bill Bankston, was standing there, and he had this vest on with a bear on it. And I thought, man, that's really cool. But has he got a grudge against his body? Is he a slave to fashion? I mean, how is he wearing this vest? And I think he read my mind, and he walks over to me and he said, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this vest is hot. I said, it's got to be. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's really cool, but how are you doing that? He said, and he tells me, he said, it's really not hot. And he said, the other thing, if you get wet, hang it up and it's dry in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I do prefer a vest. I mean, how do you get one? And he said, well, you call Heather. So I did. And, dealing with Heather was just amazing. And we got the thing ordered, and I think it took about 3 calls, and she sends me the mock-up. And I called her back, and I said, Heather, this thing is absolutely amazing. I just can't wait to see it. And I said, because you know how the customer service is and the customizability of the vest. And I said, Heather, I said, not to intrude, but I said, I hope the owner of this business realizes how far you move the needle and what you bring to the company. And she says, well, I hope so, because I'm married to him. Cracked me up. But so, yeah, I've got 2, and I just got the Gen 2 in the mail. I haven't shot in it yet, but now I'll actually forget I've got it on sometimes and get in the truck with it. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Very comfortable.
So
comfortable.
If you had to pick one certain feature, what would you say is your favorite?
That's a tough one. I would say that I can wear it year round, because up till the Barepelt, I just couldn't do that. And I actually prefer shooting in a vest, and it gives me the ability to shoot in a vest year round. I don't think I could do it in any other vest. Some people do, but it's tough. And a close second is it's a toss-up between the customizable aspect of it, but, the family, the way they work, I don't know how they do it. I think it's just those 3 things that really set them apart.
Well, I can tell you how they do it. They get about 3 hours of sleep at night.
Yeah.
I mean,
Amen.
Between their, they're both working full times, right? So they both have full-time jobs and then doing this on the side. And it's just, it's been wearing them thin. And I think there's big things coming for them. They got some help in there now, and they're starting to really, blow this into a full-blown business. It was supposed to be something cool that had a 5-year plan. And, I think Eric told me that, they hit their 5-year mark in the first 6 months. So, but now let me ask you one more question, if I could. So, we always ask someone, if somebody was on the fence, what would you tell them? I'm going to restructure that a little bit. I think after you've worn the Barepelt for a while, and especially in the conditions that you're in down there, you kind of become a salesman for them, whether you want to or not, huh?
Definitely.
Mark, if you could, let us know a little bit about what you put on your vest. What did you have them customize? Did you put some logos or some photographs, or what did you all have done?
Yeah, so the first vest, well, in fact, all 3 vests, and this was something I really thought was a cool option. You can go on this website and pick whatever you want on the vest. And so I picked kind of a tattered-looking weathered Texas flag. Mm-hmm. And I did it because a lot of times I'm shooting in Colorado, New Mexico, Louisiana, and I just thought it would be cool to fly the Texas colors, so people know where we're from. So all 3 of the vests I own have that same exact flag. And what's ended up happening, pretty much everybody that shoots with me now, they have a similar vest, but they all have the same flag on the back. So anywhere we go as a squad, we've got the same flag. We have a little logo that we created for our shooting club. And so that's on the pocket. I have game board because I'm an enormous supporter of Dwight, and got that on the back. And let's see, I did what do they call it? The engraving on one of them with the fade pattern.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's really cool. I have
that on. Yeah, that's my main one that I've shot in. I really like it. And then the next one I just got, and I've kind of got a skull and roses thing going on with it. I think it's going to be really cool. So that's what they look like.
Well, that's awesome that they took care of you, but no surprise, me and Jason have heard nothing but good things with people that deal with Barepelt and get a customized vest. So glad you had a great time with working with Heather and Eric, and hopefully, you'll be able to pass that on to more people and make them aware of the product.
Yeah, definitely. And, as they grow, I just, I think that's the key. If they can keep those aspects together, this family, I mean, because they literally, you do become part of the Barepelt family. And when I met Eric at the Nationals, I mean, all of them are just great, and they're so supportive, and they know your name. I mean, I don't know how they do it. They keep up with all of the customers.
Well, that's been very important. I spoke with Heather and Eric both in length about that. And as they grow, they want to make sure they're keeping that integrity, as they grow. So good on them. I mean, I think it's awesome.
I was with David Radulovich a few days ago, and
was showing.
It was a blast. His brain is constantly spinning, and he was showing me these designs he's done and stuff I would have never thought of. And who knows where it'll go next? I know he's talking to Heather quite a bit about different ways to let the customer do all the design work to take that load off of them. But it's going to be really amazing to see where the company goes. Yeah,
for sure. Well, Mark, they've got a great ambassador in you. Obviously, you've spoke very highly of the vest. I'm sure they're going to be happy. Any last closing thoughts?
I would think if someone's on the fence, and especially if they've shot in a vest, I guess one thing to point out that actually Eric showed me, because I tried to understand why are these vests so comfortable. And he said the mesh in a standard vest actually holds heat. And if there's no wind blowing through that, it's just basically a heat exchanger to your body. And I thought, I never thought about that. I didn't know that's how it works. Well, that mesh doesn't exist in a Barepelt.
Right.
And it's literally like having just another shirt on. You absolutely don't know you've got it on, but you have all of the advantages of a vest. So if you're on the fence about trying a vest, you won't be sorry. It's definitely worth doing. And look at the price point. How can you beat the price?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. Well, that's awesome, Mark. Well, thanks for spending a few minutes with us. We really appreciate your time. We'll get your story out to everybody that listens to the show. And keep enjoying Barepelt, and good luck on the rest of your shooting season this year.
I really appreciate it. And, guys, I actually love your show. I was listening to the show when I got the text from Jason, so I thought that was poetic.
Well, thanks for being a listener, man. We appreciate that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, hope to meet you at the Nationals, guys.
Yes, sir.
All right, have a good night.
See you, Mark.
Good night.
Bye-bye. You were 100% right, Mr. Rambo. That was some cool segments.
Wait a minute. You were actually doubting me?
Well.
Don't, you know what? Stop or I'll cut you off right now. I'll turn your microphone off.
Sorry.
Hey, big announcement. Listen, the week of the Nationals, specifically October the 27th, which would be that Thursday that we would normally release a podcast, we are not going to have an audio version out of our podcast, but we will have a very special YouTube video release of Questions for the Coaches with David Radulovich and Rad Chad Roberts.
Yep.
So check that out. Also, we will be filming the Top Gun shootout on... Is that Friday night?
That's Friday night. That was a lot of fun last year.
At the Nationals, yeah, and that'll be on our YouTube channel as well, so look for that. So because of those two things, we will not have a regular audio podcast that week. So get over to our YouTube channel, the Dead Pair Podcast, and subscribe, so that way you'll catch all these things when they come out.
Yeah. Well, and going back to Matt, I mean, again, I think that guy was great. Definitely blew me away with the knowledge and the information he was able to lay out, because I think his journey mirrors so much of our own, where you're trying to balance, work, family, and everything else, and still go shooting and have fun. But at the same time, you also have to manage your expectations about where you're going to go and how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And I think his comments about the money that you have to decide to spend, where you spend it, and what you do with your time to get better in this sport, very, very valid points.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to help everybody map those out.
Yeah.
We have some very special guests that are going to validate what we're going to throw out there. This is going to be a 4-part series that Sean and I are releasing. Do you want to go ahead and tell them the name? Do you want to leave it in suspense?
We'll call it The Path.
The Path. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4-part series. So we're going to go over all of this stuff. And, we're going to help you lay out everything from what, Sean, like how to categorize yourself as a shooter.
Yep.
Setting goals, analyzing goals, performance,
figuring out the shoots that you want to go to, the budget, the economics, and then all the other stuff involved with growing and becoming better in this sport.
After you've analyzed your goals and your performance, setting new goals, planning shoots, how to budget for all this stuff, right? Because you don't just have to budget for the shoot. You have to budget your practice and training around it.
None of it's cheap.
None of it's cheap. So we're going to lay out the path. I like that, Sean. Not the journey, the path.
The path.
I like that.
Yeah.
Did you start?
I have moments of brilliance.
Okay.
And then the other part is stupidity, but just got to roll with me, man.
Okay,
you got to pick the needle out of the haystack.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. But that was pretty good. You ought to go home and tell your wife she needs to pat you on the back.
I get a pat on the back?
Yes, you need an attaboy.
I'll tell her Jason said give me a pat on the back.
She'll probably smack you.
She'll probably look at me like, what?
Oh, man. But no, this is something that Sean and I have been working on, and we've put a lot of thought, a lot of energy into this, and we got people from the very tippy top of the game to give us some feedback, some sound drops, some conversation, little sound bites that we can go back to with them to kind of validate everything that we're saying.
And hopefully this will all be understood as being as beneficial as having anybody else on the shooting program on our show, that you can take away and basically say, okay, here's where I am. This is what I want to do. How do I get there?
Absolutely.
Once again, the path.
You and your path. I like it.
The path.
Okay, I like it. That's enough. Don't press it too hard.
All right.
So, but anyway, in the meantime, Sean Alley.
We always say, week in and week out, take somebody new shooting, take them to a tournament, take them to a charity event. Just get a gun in their hands. Get them out there and show them how much fun this sport is.
And if they like this journey,
well,
they need to buy Anthony's new book.
They need to buy Anthony's new book. There's a lot of good coaches out there, though. Don't limit yourself to Anthony. Obviously, if you can get in with him, he's great. But there's dozens of other great coaches out there. Rad Chad is fantastic. David's fantastic. Brad Kidd. I mean, just come on.
We have them all on the show.
We have them all on the show, so they've been all out there. So if you guys have been listening, you know who to go to.
Yep, absolutely. Well, hey, listen, Sean, until next week.
See you all back here on the Dead Pair Podcast.
We'll see you next time on the Dead Pair Podcast.
The Dead Pair Podcast is energized by KL Ammo Game Bore US. The Dead Pair theme song was written, arranged, and produced by Toby Tomplay. Special thanks to the following sponsors: Barepelt, Negrini, Rhino, Otopro, Dawn Grant, Atlas Trap Company, RE Ranger, Woolly Shooting, Folded Wing Apparel Company, and White Flyer Targets.